immediately over to the next slide. This is now coming a bit back to the heading of the session. And in the end, selection criteria, of course, is one important element to have good projects, but there are many others. So just not to forget about the context, why we should have such good selection systems. But of course, guidance is essential because you wouldn't like to have many stranded investments in terms of having people writing projects which are then non-relevant or not fit for the program. So guidance is essential. Then, even if you have a perfect system of selecting, there's still the project implementation, which counts in order to have, in the end, in your program, good projects. Just a reminder. And now looking a bit more deeply into assessment and bringing us all into this wonderful technical terminology. Usually we have 3 distinct stages in most programs. One is administrative formal check, usually very easy to be done, rather at secretary level, 0 or 1, met or not met. Eligibility check usually goes then to a bit more difficult criteria to be assessed, but still we are in a world of black or white. You either pass or you don't pass. And then this is, let's say, the focus of our today's meeting. Then we move over to the quality assessment, which rather measures intensity. Here I would like to go to the next slide. Still, we think when you have a manual, for example, it's obvious that it's good that you very openly show your selection criteria, and very good to have very illustrative examples. This is for, let's say, cross-border infrastructure, very simple. But when it comes to research innovation projects, it's quite clear you may either provide a narrative focused on the result in your manual, or you may provide a narrative focusing on cooperation. And it's quite clear that for Interreg, the narrative on cooperation should be the dominant narrative. Otherwise, we are coming quite close to the mainstream programs. But clear, for newcomers, you need very illustrative examples and simple explanations. And then what is unique about Interreg, we would see obviously project relevance. This is a very generic point, but then unique things are cooperation character. And we will go into that more deeply after lunch. And of course, partnership relevance, because the unique point about Interreg is that you cannot do anything without a partnership. Either it's inherent to the partner, speaking of sole beneficiary, or you need a proper partnership. When it comes to assessment, it is utmost crucial that you establish, you meaning now people working in JSs and managing authorities, that you establish trust and that you have a reliable partnership with the MC members. Because otherwise you may invest lots and lots of time into project assessment, but it doesn't help anything if it's completely neglected in decision-making by the MC members, also quite obvious. And what should be reflected in our view in scoring is the uniqueness of the Interreg criteria, meaning they should rather dominate in our view. And what is a bit of a challenge, recalling my own work in a joint secretariat, usually it shouldn't be one person assessing, but rather several persons. And you do it across many projects. And then it's quite tricky that you, in the end, have a package with comparable assessments across all the projects. And this is where I would say one of the most frequent options to make sure is that you have at least 4 eyes looking into every assessment. But here we will then hear examples from practitioners. Next slide, please. Just to show you, there is no one-size-fits-all approach in Interreg, but there is a huge diversity. I mean, we have strategic versus operational criteria. Then usually looking into assessment sheets, you have a heading, which is a criterion like cooperation character, and usually you will find in the assessment sheet sub-questions. And these sub-questions are point of interest for our discussions in the afternoon, because this is usually really developed in the context of the program. It's really tailor-made to what your program has experienced and what your program wants to achieve. Scoring, another major point, it can go from 1 to 20, so really scaling, or it can be just something like low, medium, high. And this makes, of course, a huge difference in the whole approach. And you can have a scoring plus written justification, which was always my favorite, but I heard from colleagues there are good reasons to provide just scores on your assessment. Then you have the option to use knockout criteria. So there are many, many different options. And we'll move on to the next one. This is just building up the terminology, but it's quite clear. Strategic ones, key are the project relevance, cooperation character, partnership relevance. Whereas, let's say, the good, sturdy operational ones are the work plan, the lead partner capacity, communication budget. And then we move over to next. This is just briefly pointing what Interact has done. And here I would see first and foremost the process we labeled as HIT. But there are also many other elements, for example, our attempts to bring a bit more a territorial perspective to Interact. There are efforts of my colleagues, like Bessiano Robert, to work on calls, or I may recall also that we did a study on risk management in project selection, which was another attempt to raise awareness how you can prevent any risks in your assessment selection procedures, but also in the decision-making procedures. And with that, I would like to pass over to Isabella, because I wasn't personally involved in HIT. And I think, Isabella, the floor is yours to give a few observations on HIT.
Thank you, Bernhard. Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Isabella, and I've been working on HIT, the Harmonized Implementation Tools, for the past 18 months or so. To give you a bit of background, HIT is a community initiative facilitated by Interact that was carried out already in the 14 to 20 period. According to the case-based impact evaluation of Interact, HIT brought simplification, especially for applicants and for beneficiaries, while it also encouraged a culture of inter-program cooperation. HIT was also the cornerstone for developing the first community monitoring system, the EMS. Now, fast forward a few years, and already in 2018, the Interact community reached out to Interact to relaunch the HIT process and update the tools, the different forms that form HIT, so they would be ready at the launch of programs in 2021. So in order to do so, Interact facilitated the exchange of expert knowledge and experience among willing Interreg programs through the establishment of the HIT core group. In this forum, representatives of Interreg programs from all strands met a number of times and developed these HIT tools that cover the entire project and program lifecycle, and developed tools that would work for any strand. These tools can also form the basis for any monitoring system, as they are the foundation of GEMS, the Joint Electronic Monitoring System. In the spirit of cooperation, every member of the core group shared their respective program identity and agreed to represent all of Interreg and find solutions to meet the regulatory requirements that can be used by any Interreg program. The forms that were developed were carefully studied to align with regulations provisions. Every single field of data was examined, every question carefully worded, to ensure that the HIT tools can support program and project management for the programs that choose to use these tools. This exercise also brought a common understanding and developed a shared approach to the regulatory requirements and to the terminology used in Interreg. Through all this harmonization and simplification of work practices, the HIT core group also respected the diversity of needs of the Interreg community. And this is why the HIT tools always follow the maximum flexibility logic. Each and every program can amend, change, adapt the forms to their specific needs and challenges in order to achieve the highest possible results with their limited available resources. This way, in the spirit of cooperation, the HIT tools follow the regulations provisions and yet at the same time provide enough space for the diversity of Interreg. The HIT documents are accessible on the Interact website and they're presented in packages: selection package, reporting package, the control package, and then contractual documents package. I will share the link to these documents in the chat in a minute. And very briefly, this is it for HIT. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Isa. And now my eyes turning to Philip. What's the story of territoriality and selection?
Yes, the story about territoriality is, I mean, we always love to talk about Interreg. Maybe sometimes, I don't say we forget, but we put aside that, in fact, we talk about European territorial cooperation. And that the T in European territorial cooperation is very important, with the territorial dimension of Interreg being one of the unique selling points of Interreg, which makes actually the difference to other funding sources. And that's why in Interact we started to work on how to support programs and projects in strengthening the territorial dimension of the programs and the projects. And we developed a so-called territorial package. It's a set of 8 fishes, which should help you, the Interreg practitioners, in highlighting, in strengthening, in supporting the territorial dimension of your interventions. And by nature, by definition, of course, this is not any additional layer of something, but this territoriality should be inbuilt throughout the whole program lifecycle and the whole project lifecycle. And naturally, by that, also the project selection is one part of the program lifecycle where territoriality should be ensured. And one of the 8 fishes is actually focusing on project selection. So how can we ensure during project selection the territorial dimension of the project and through the projects of the program? In the discussions we had on this fish, on this question, it became quite quickly clear that we do not want to invent yet another layer of new selection criteria specifically addressing territoriality, but we want to be pragmatic. And the pragmatic way is that we use actually the HIT criteria, which Isabella just presented, or maybe not using the HIT criteria, but that we developed a territorial interpretation of the HIT criteria. So on one of the 8 fishes, actually the number 8, you will find what we call territorial interpretation of the commonly known HIT selection criteria. So this is all what I wanted to tell you about this territorial package, inviting you not only to have a look at it, actually to have a look at it under the link which I'm going to post now, but also to use it and to spread these fishes where you think it could be appropriate to spread it to your monitoring committee members, to your contact points, to whomever you think you would need to involve to strengthen the territorial dimension of your program and your projects. Thank you very much.